Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another fabulous episode of the Healthcare Trailblazers podcast. Good to be sitting here today with someone that I call a friend, Dr. Adam Carewe. Adam just recently left Kaiser after a bunch of years, and someone that I tend to follow in the AI space on my LinkedIn page, and someone that I think has a lot of smart things to say. So, Adam, thanks for spending time with us today.
No, you bet. Thanks, Mano. Appreciate the intro. Happy to be here.
Let's start with maybe your time at Kaiser and what'd you do there? Start there.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like say I was like born and raised there because I came, my residency for family medicine training was at a Denver hospital that wasn't a Kaiser residency, but it was a Kaiser affiliated hospital in Colorado. Kaiser in Colorado doesn't have their own hospitals like they do in California and some of the other regions. So I was kind of like indoctrinated into the Kaiser way, as a resident, because we would go on their services and, we'd deliver Kaiser patients, babies, and take care of them in the ICU and whatnot. So, and I had Kaiser when I was a kid back in California. That's where I grew up originally. So we had it for a while back then. That was actually when Kaiser wasn't that great though. But I think really highly of Kaiser Permanente, and it, and so when I left residency, I had attendings from Kaiser that kind of would precept in our clinic too. And they just, they would kind of say, this is like the best gig. You should do this. You get to practice evidence-based medicine. It's value-based care. You're not incentivized to order a bunch of tests or do a bunch of procedures. You're kind of incentivized to do the right thing for the patient. And I was like, that sounded very enticing as a physician. I didn't want to be out there just hawking things and, trying, not that all physicians are hawking their goods and services, but there is an incentive problem there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and so I joined KP as a family physician, had my own practice for about 2.5 years, and just started, kind of asking questions. And I've always been interested in electronic health records and Epic particularly, and wanting to make it just as optimized as possible. I mean, I wanted to get home every night at 5:00. I had young babies at that time. And I wanted to get home. And the way to do that is to be super efficient yourself. And that just translated into helping others be super efficient in my clinic. And then, that got the ear of somebody else and said, hey, there's this kid in Hidden Lake Kaiser Clinic, we should like bring him on board. And so I got that opportunity to join kind of what we called like our Epic, or KP Health Connect is what Kaiser calls their version of Epic. It was like the KP Health Connect physician team. And that was my kind of official start, like in informatics. And eventually got, just did other things, kind of hustled and found things that were needed internally and built those programs and scaled those programs, and then passed those programs off to others that, I helped bring on board, and then eventually landed at the CMIO about, 3 years ago. But
that's awesome.
You said I just left, so I did.
Yeah. Well, and I want to get to the Epic piece in a second, but the first thing that you mentioned that I want to call out is, value-based care seems to still be a pretty small percentage of the way that healthcare is run, or maybe true value-based care. And one of the things that you said that really attracted you to come over was that you felt that they were practicing value-based care, and that they weren't just selling services essentially, and actually trying to do the right thing by the patient. And that stuck out to me because I have a friend that's moving now to Florida, and he's a doctor. He's a family doctor, and he's interviewing for different systems out there. And he was telling me, there's 2 main systems, and one of them I'm a huge fan of, and the other one he interviewed for. And he came back and he told me, he's like, I was just so unimpressed. It just felt like they just wanted me to just be like a cog in the wheel. And they were just like, yep, you're going to see X amount of patients. Like the whole interview process was just how you're going to do numbers. And he was like, I was so turned off by that. And I think that, it's interesting how much value-based care, and practicing value-based care has an effect on doctors. It's not just about the patients, not just about, a different reimbursement model, but maybe you could speak a little bit more to from the doctor's perspective,
Yeah.
how that feels.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, obviously when I started, I was like very green and obviously, frankly, scared. I mean, I think you probably shouldn't admit as a doctor that you're scared, but doctors are scared when they first come out of training. Like, you know what you're doing, but it's like now you're the person signing the paper. But I think, yeah, I mean, your question's really, really good. And I think what it is, it's interesting, and I'll talk a little bit why it's a little bit of a tug even in like a value-based organization, because ultimately, I mean, whether you're value-based or fee-for-service, I mean, it's a business, right? You're not giving away care for free, so it's tough to like balance that true kind of like value with actual not making it also feel like you're a cog in the wheel. I mean, I think, yeah, fee for service. I mean, I think my wife is a physician, works in that environment, and I mean, it's just like, they're like, okay, your benchmark was 50th percentile for, all this specialty. Now it's 65. It's like, oh, now it's 70. They just keep pushing the goalposts, and that's like squeezing doctors. And I think that's I think the challenge is you come out of med school, and you went to med school for a reason. You went because you wanted to actually help people. And, nurses do the same thing. I mean, physical therapists do the same thing. They all enter those professions because they want to help. And then you get into like the actual job, and you're just like, oh my God, this is just like a grind, like lots of jobs. But, I think the difference with value-based care is like the incentives are different, like truly different. You're incentivized to do the best thing for the patient, like whether that's getting all their screenings done or they're handling their chronic illnesses and managing them. Like the typical system now is set up for, frankly, to be incentivized to get people sick. Like hospitals wouldn't exist if we didn't have CHF exacerbations or COPD exacerbations or
Right.
a lot of these chronic illnesses that could be better controlled. And so I think that's like, you always keep that in the back of your mind when you're working for a company like Kaiser Permanente, because you got to keep that in your mind, because that's the reason why you're seeing everybody. And that's why you're answering all the extra MyChart messages and, all the phone calls that come in. And, it's lots of stuff hitting you, and that's stressful, but you're actually trying to prevent, your patients from truly getting sick.
Yeah. Kind of an ADD utopian question, but do you think there's a future, if in a perfect world where preventive care was practiced well, and we maybe fix some of the diet problems and exercise societal problems and things like that, right? And people were generally healthy. In a perfect world, do you think that hospitals and ERs become a really scaled down, like they don't become the focal point of the healthcare system? And I'm asking that because I feel like the hospitals are they're the highest cost, right? Part of healthcare by a large amount, but they're also the biggest. They're the biggest losers as well from a revenue perspective. Like they're all like loss leaders, so to speak, right? So they all lose money, but they're necessary. So you kind of have to have a system built around them in order to keep them up and running, because you needed a hospital. So is there a utopian version where you can kind of have a very scaled down, like you don't have to support this massive hospital ER system?
Yeah, another great question, which I expect more coming. No, I do. I think about this kind of stuff a lot, and I've even kind of blogged about it before on my Substack, and I think you get inklings of this type of what I'm going to answer, on LinkedIn too. But yeah, I mean, I do. I'm optimistic that there will be a shift. It's going to take a seismic shift, to actually do it. And it's actually going to need so many things to like be realigned, readjusted. Frankly, I don't want to bash insurance, because we all need health insurance, but like the insurance model needs to be changed in order for what you just asked to come to fruition. And yes, I mean, if we truly, truly did get, adequate, I'll just say, like, as a physician, if our health systems, if you truly got reimbursed for the ambulatory care and the actual prevention that does prevent those hospitalizations, yes, hospitals will shrink. I mean, I do think of a utopian future, hopefully in my lifetime, where hospitals are like the little corner thing that we have now for a clinic. And, you know, the concept of a ambulatory kind of care is, you know, all done digitally. It's all like, you know, it's all done in a way that is just so easy for consumers and patients. And yeah, so I do see that future.
Yeah. I'm curious. I just Googled what's the healthiest country, and apparently it's Spain. I wonder if there's a difference. I wonder if there's a recognizable difference in the way that the role that hospitals play. In
yeah, that's a good question. Like for specifically in Spain. Yeah. And I think of Spain as, you know, these may be stereotypes, but like, you know, it's known. I mean, I think I don't think they smoke as much as maybe the French nearby do, but I think overall they do. I mean, they feel, you know, there's a culture there that is very much like, you know, you got to be around people, don't like work so hard.
Very like,
you know, it goes into those lifestyle things, you know, and obviously traditional diet of Spain is obviously really healthy. It's primarily vegetarian, you know, all those things.
Yeah. Kind of blue zone-y vibes. Because on the one hand, I always love to go back to, because the healthcare system has become such a monstrosity of a just gigantic, overwhelming thing. So I love to like go back, and I've said this much times, but like I love to go back to like, okay, let's go back 400 years ago to like that small little hamlet in the middle of whatever, and like what was a doctor and what was healthcare's role. And, you know, but the unfair part, and the doctor was just some guy that lived at the edge of town that was kind of a little weird, and he had a bag full of potions, and he'd come and put leeches on you if you had a headache or something, you know. But on the flip side, it's not really fair to go back to that, because also like pretty much everyone died all the time. I mean, people would have 10 kids because they wanted a 20%, you know, chance of a 20% success rate, you know. So maybe not the best to go back there, but that's why I'm curious about like maybe the role that hospitals play in like blue zones or Spain or things like that. So we should definitely revisit that. But anyways, okay, so let's talk about Epic. You became the chief medical informatics officer over at Kaiser in Colorado, and you also just came off the UGM the Epic conference, and so you're pretty plugged in. So let's talk Epic for a couple minutes. And I had the opportunity to kind of crash your live party earlier this week. You were doing a podcast with some other great people, including Graham Walker, who I respect tremendously. And so let's talk about partnership, interoperability. You were on the other side of this. Sounds like there's a lot of customizations you were able to do. As your role in Kaiser, as the CMIO, was it easy for you to integrate with different technologies? Was that even in your purview, or were you just trying to navigate the actual core piece of Epic? Like what was that like? Just broad strokes.
Yeah. No, I mean, the last part of your question, like, was it part of my life? Absolutely. I mean, there was a whole, you could imagine, even in Colorado, there was a whole team of some clinicians, other IT kind of very smart folks that their sole purpose was everything health information exchange in KP. So, and KP even has a national kind of group that kind of looks at it from the big picture, you know, like the big TEFCA picture and the Cures Act and all these things that have come about, and making sure that we're lined up for compliance and, you know, being able to share notes and not hide things and get penalized and those sort of things. But yeah, I mean, I think like specifically in my, you know, the parts that I was involved in and obviously a part of the conversations were really those big things, but then also, you know, some of the smaller things. I mean, you know, health information exchange still frankly kind of sucks. Like, you know, it's one of those things where everyone has to participate for it to actually be beneficial to everyone else. And meaning that, you know, frankly, all these like little one shop kind of like startups that, you know, give out, you know, pills for ED or whatever, like they have to contribute their information too, because even at big health systems, you don't know a patient's doing, these little side things. You don't know they used Amazon Clinic. So I think like the big problem with HIE still is that not everyone is forced to participate. All the big, entities pretty much are kind of forced. And if you're not doing it, you'll be forced by systems around you. So like in my role, specifically in Colorado, I mean, thankfully there is a Colorado exchange network like most states have. This is all like kind of before any TEFCA kind of things came around. But, what was nice about those is most of the health systems, even the little remote ones over in like the eastern, like southeastern side of Colorado or elsewhere out of the populated areas, they still would pipe in. So we were still able to get most information if, a Kaiser patient was seen somewhere else. And if it wasn't naturally a part of the HIE kind of pipelines that were built, if we had a strong use case for it, we would build a custom, direct connection essentially. Obviously we're trying to get away from that because you want to try and stick with open kind of formats, but
yeah. It's such a good point, because when you're trying to achieve some sort of, call it whole patient care or call it whatever you want to call it, definitely if anything value-based care in the value-based care arena, you can't have like one small piece that's just disjointed from the rest of that's fragmented from the rest of the system. I mean, you have to know everything that's going on with the patient if you hope to make the right choices. Like the data it's all about data, and the data that you're going to put out is only as good as the data you're going to put in. So hopefully we're trending in the right direction there. And I think we are, where more and more people are joining, and it's becoming easier for people to join in. But on the flip side, let's talk about, there could be a ton of data, but then like, what do you do with it? Right. And something that we talked about actually on the live is trying to make sure that everything kind of is connected. And so you can have all these different points of data. So what was your approach to leveraging the data in an intelligent way to actually have a good snapshot, to know that everything's kind of connected and be aware without checking a million different sources? How did that happen?
Well, I'll tell you, it wasn't great because this is one area that even Epic needs to work on. So any of the Epic devs that are maybe watching this, take note, but they know that this is still a problem. I mean, the biggest problem with HIE that doesn't just kind of automatically flow in, the stuff that doesn't flow in yet are actually like the stuff that needs to be kind of manually reconciled. So like the big things like confirming medications, confirming problems, confirming allergies. So like those typical things that are on like a snapshot view of a patient, those things come in, but you currently, like in actually, I think all the EMRs are this way. You have to go to like this other activity and you see the laundry list of all the things that these people have had in the past, which that in of itself is okay. The problem is it's a matching problem. You might go on there and they may have like 6 different diagnoses of different hypertension, and it's just slightly different codes. So like Epic can't say like, oh, these are all the same. Like they don't have a level of confidence to say that. So they put that onus on a clinician or a nurse or someone who knows how to like reconcile these things. And it's a very clunky process. I mean, you got to like literally go down a list and you're like, yes, no. Oh yeah, combine, this is the same as this. Is that a good use of people's time? No way. I mean, that needs to be fixed. And I think technology and frankly, probably artificial intelligence will fix that eventually.
Like an easy lift
right now.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the stuff that's, like you mentioned, like, so say there's just like chart review information that automatically is kind of already connected. You still have to like refresh it occasionally. And you could set up batch jobs to do this, and we did on the system level. But, like if you're just seeing someone and they don't tell you that they just saw someone else the other day or went to a hospital for an ER visit, if you don't click refresh, you don't see that in Epic too. So there's that type of issue as well. But, I think the reality is there is a ton of data, and like even in your own sphere as a physician, when you're seeing a patient, you're probably only assessing like 1 to 2% of that available pertinent data, I would call, at that time. I mean, obviously you're trying to get as much as you can, but the systems aren't there yet to like present and nudge and kind of like actually help you in that way. It requires a lot of system configuration to make, review type of kind of like summaries and, different flow sheets and things. And there's plenty of tech companies that are trying to solve this too, and frankly, some of them are doing a good job at it. But it's still a challenge.
Yeah. Let's let's shift over to AI for a second, because I definitely want to talk about, you've got a lot of really good opinions. You're someone that has been posting on it for pretty much as long as I've been looking, which is really since, end of 22. So let's go back to your role as CMIO, and so put back on your Kaiser hat for a second. What, in your view, is the approach to AI from some of these larger systems? There's still a lot that, for people that are really involved in, generative AI applications or other, machine learning applications, it feels like the world is moving so fast and it feels like everybody knows about it. But then I'll go to my local gym and I'll tell somebody, the guy working out next to me, how I use, ChatGPT to just track my calories every day. I just tell it everything that I ate, and it gives me a full breakdown to the exact of every protein calorie that I had. I even now can just take a picture of my plate and in a chat, and it tells me everything that's on there, and it can keep track, and it can suggest, all right, if you want to complete your protein goals, here's and it knows my preferences for foods, and it'll tell me, I know you like, Greek yogurt and this, so here's exactly how much you should eat of this specific preferred food, right? So anyway, bit of a tangent on ChatGPT there, but I'm telling this guy next to me, and he's like, "Oh, that's so cool. What fitness app is that?" And I'm like, ChatGPT? He's like, "Yeah, what? I've never heard of that." And so, we're actually still really in the early innings of AI and its world takeover. But specifically in healthcare, there's still a lot of open questions about regulation, about, there's still conversations around liability and risk and hallucinations, and there's still so much to be seen. And so for a system the size of Kaiser, and you don't have to speak for Kaiser, but just that the systems of those size, are they, what's their view? What's their view on AI? How immediately do you think that large systems think it's smart to jump in? Do they want to be the first? Do they want to be in the middle? They definitely don't want to be the last. Maybe try to get us in the head a little bit.
No, I mean, I think it's worth actually, I mean, I know where you were going with the question, but it's worth mentioning that, large, medium, small health systems, they've actually been using AI for years. I think what you're getting at, though, is more of like actually trying to figure out how to use more of the generative AI and like the large language model pieces. And so I think, like, because this is a new frontier, and like you said, it's still shocking to me when people have like no idea what that is, or haven't even at least tried it. Like, just go there and type in, like, make me a poem that I can, say to my kids for a bedtime story about an astronaut. Like, just try that prompt. Like, what you get out, you will be blown away.
I'm sorry.
Not to mention the ones
just
that
I just wanted to, just in case you haven't seen this one, it's been around for a little bit, but I hate to cut you off, but you have kids, fine. Right?
Yes, yeah, I have two kids.
So there's an app called Suno. Have you heard of it?
Oh, I've used Suno.
Okay. With the songs?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It is amazing. So I do that for my kids all the time, where I'll say, like, make a song about, I'll tell my kid's name, here's some context about what my kid is doing, and then it can just make this adorable kid song about my son, and then the kids love it. So any parents out there, try Suno. It's awesome. But sorry, back to you.
No, it's funny, and I'll find the link. I made a Suno, it's Suno, right? SUNO?
SUNO, yeah.
Yeah. I made a Suno jingle for like NerdMDs. It's like super cheesy, but it is like so funny. I think it's on my LinkedIn somewhere.
I should do a new podcast intro. That's genius.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. And we're like segueing all over the place, but I have used like audio tools like the music and the intro for NerdMD's podcast is it's all AI. It's like an AI voice. It's the music I created myself, but I used I'm blanking on the name of it. I didn't use Suno, but I used one that was like a competitor because I just wanted like kind of good background music. But no, it's sweet. There's a CMIO for Parkview Health System that he saw that jingle that I made, and he's like taking it to the max. He like makes all these videos for his health system with like these really kitschy and catchy kind of things that help them, see the new stuff that's coming in Epic they're going to be releasing. It's very creative, and he actually gives me credit on all of his like little. I have like a little credit on his at the end of his videos.
Inspired by,
yeah, because I kind of opened his eyes to it. But yeah, back to your original question.
Yes.
So yes, health systems have been using some form of AI. A lot of stuff like where they're trying to do predictive analytics, or trying to prevent people from getting into the hospital. I mean, lots of Kaiser's published a ton of stuff on that, as many other systems have. But I think with this generative AI stuff, I think most of them, like, it's like you want to get something out there, because there's certain use cases that are obviously very safe, and anything that can help on like the administrative side, anything that can help in those things. I mean, these are all the things that have been talked about a lot, but I think that's like where health systems, even very conservative ones, historically, like KP, will say, oh yeah, like we need to get ambient, AI for the clinicians. Like that should be an automatic. Anybody should be able to use that. I think there's all the systems are still thinking like they need these things, but I think what gets a challenge is once you start using these tools where they're making some sort of clinical decision, like some sort of nudge, like not even like fully obviously automatic, but just helping the clinician like make their ultimate decision. I think that's like a gray area where health systems are still really scared, because what you don't want, and we even see this in ambient, is you don't want just to use the tool and then blindly just be like, click, okay, submit. And we saw that with ambient, like some physicians loved it, but like they didn't review anything. And there can be stuff in there that's just not factually right. I mean, not to say there's a ton of stuff in medical documentation that's not factually right too. I mean, things get transcribed incorrectly all the time, but I think that's probably the part, like to your specific question, where health systems have like this sort of pause, and they want to make sure from a quality standpoint, anything that's going to give some sort of clinical decision nudge, or if there's if it's ultimately ending at something that's kind of actually determining clinical care. That's the part where I think is the most caution still.
Yeah, fair enough. So you spent a good amount of time at Kaiser, and you put out a post on LinkedIn this week, kind of announcing that you're starting a new chapter. It was a great post, by the way. How did that come about? Was this something you were thinking about for a long time? What convinced you to kind of take that leap?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of said this in the post itself, but yeah, I'll give a little more color to it. I mean, I'll be honest, I've been thinking about this type of stuff since I was like in medical school. I had a web design business back before med school where I did that on the side, kind of some graphic design. I've always had these like kind of little entrepreneurial kind of things that I like. And it probably bothers my wife, because like when we bought an RV, the first thing I said was, we're not going to use this RV all the time. Like, I'm going to put it on Outdoorsy and make some money from it and create a business. And she's like, dude, you're like a full-time executive. Like, this is insane. But so I think like that's the stuff that's always like on my mind. And I really enjoy like creating things. And so I did a ton of that creative stuff internally in KP, but I think there was enough of like an itch to actually go bigger with that kind of itch that I keep saying I had. And that was really truly the reason. It was nothing bad per se that was a part of my old job, but I was talking to someone earlier today, and it's like, I don't think most, I'll say physicians, but I don't think a lot of professionals see themselves like doing the lifer thing with a company anymore. I mean, definitely with the younger generations like you, and even younger than you, they're going to be like very, oh no, this is a good job. That was fun. Oh, look at this. I'm going to go try this. So I think there's just enough of that with me where I was like, if I don't do this now, I'm going to be like 60, and like, then I'm going to be too close to retirement, and I will like not ever want to like jump. And so that's truly what made me want to try and do something different.
It's one of those crazy things, and I commented this on your post how everything good in life, and there's someone responded to me that I stole someone else's line, which there's a million of these, but everything good in life is on the other side of that kind of leap, and it's really interesting, and even if people listening out there, like even if you haven't maybe left the job, which by the way, I'm not one of these guys that like I started like I'm a entrepreneur type of person. But I'm equally not the type of person that thinks that my life's journey just needs to be projected on everyone around me. And this is the number one thing that you must do. I don't do any of that. So for a lot of people, having a good job that you feel secure and you feel good about, and you don't feel like you're just a robot is spectacular and can be very meaningful. But even if you haven't done some massive leap, like leaving a really cushy, high status career or something like that, there's going to be many risks that you take in life. And like for me personally, I've almost learned to like recognize this pit in my stomach that you get when you are taking some sort of risk. And I've learned to like recognize that and then see it as like a super positive thing. Like if you could like transfer that feeling into, oh, this is a very good feeling. You know what I mean? Because if you're not ever having this feeling, then you're just being comfortable. And once you believe and trust that, it doesn't mean you'll never fail, by the way. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you don't fail. Like, I think failing is way overrated. But I'm not saying you won't fail, but that feeling is a necessity for life. I think like that feeling, that pit in your stomach that like, oh man, like, I don't know if this is going to work and there's risk and whatever. Like if you're never having that, I don't know, man, what's the ride worth,
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. It was very well said. And I think, that was like, I'd say definitely like the hard, like the time where I kind of had that most uncomfortable feeling, like that conflicted feeling was right when I was like making the decision, to like say, I'm actually leaving, like I've been thinking about it. I've been like, trying to kind of build the NerdMD kind of brand on the side, but it was like totally on the side. And I think, yeah, that I was very uncomfortable during that period, but I knew I was like, okay, this is uncomfortable because you really do want to do it. It's that nervousness like you had as a kid. Like, my daughter, she has to give a speech to be her 8th grade representative today, like after school. And, I got up this morning and I was like, I always ask her, oh, how you doing? And she's like, oh my God, I'm so nervous, and it's like, she never says that, but it's like, she had that kind of angst, which like that angst is good. It makes you like being uncomfortable in situations, makes you better. And I mean, don't have to say this to other doctors that are listening, but like training to be a doctor is all about being uncomfortable. I mean, you're like the first time you do anything, it's like the first, right? Like first time you've intubated someone, the first time you've tried a chest tube, like the first time you've done a vasectomy. I mean, all these things, it's like crazy, super uncomfortable. You have to be okay with that.
Yeah. And you know what? It's so interesting because it's literally the same exact feeling as when you are literally, I don't know when the last time you jumped off like a dock or something, but it's like literally the same feeling, that pit in your stomach when you get up to the edge. And I mean, some people just, rub, but like, oh, I don't want to jump. And then you do it like 3 or 4 times. And then what's always funny, and this is where the parable actually really fits with real life, is that when you finally do take that jump and then you land in the water and you look back up at the dock and it's like way shorter of a jump than you thought.
Always.
And it's always like that, right? You always look up and you're like, that really wasn't bad at all. And I think it's really like that in the real life example too, where like you finally take the leap and you're like, oh, this is okay. Yeah, like this is totally fine. So anyway, but let's talk about NerdMDs for a bit. What is the brand? What do you I know you've got a podcast, so what's that about?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to kind of talk about the history of it, so my buddy Dale and I, we used to work together in KP. And, we just kind of like, we loved like this like informatics work. We loved being a physician. We loved, really being in the weeds with the technology. And like Dale and I normally do, sometimes over a beer or just via text message, we're literally like shooting it back and forth, like just ideas and things. And we were like, man, we got to like think of some sort of like brand company that like we could eventually maybe turn it into something in the future, that could basically take all of our learnings and then like apply that to something that could then help like multiple other people, like a scalability piece, take what we do really well internally in a health system and make that available to everyone else. And so, like what we always would do, first thing we do is we start, looking for URLs that are available, that are catchy. And that's actually how we landed on NerdMDs. We were trying all sorts of things. And then all of a sudden Dale was like, dude, he's like, NerdMDs is available. And I'm like, no way. That's like, seems like that would be a company already. And so I was just like, I'm buying the URL, like I snagged it from GoDaddy right there. And so what we kind of like, obviously when we were in our health system, we weren't able to like kind of be entrepreneurial. So what we did kind of initially with it was we just tried to make it kind of like this gathering, kind of like a social group of, basically physicians like us. And we specifically wanted it to just be physicians, not because we're not inclusive of other clinicians that love to do this, but there is like a little special part about being a physician who does this. And so that's like how it all, like the genesis of it. So, we have a private LinkedIn group, where it's about 300 like CMIOs essentially. It's like it's not like a super active group because frankly, all those CMIOs are so busy, they can't be, but like, occasionally there's like a nugget in there where someone will throw out and you can ask questions. And so, and we're considering moving it to Slack too, to make it kind of just easier for people since they're probably already in that for something else. But I think now that I'm a free agent, I'm like, wow, now I can actually expand this, and actually start doing, at least myself, what we visioned for kind of like maybe this eventual army of a bunch of NerdMDs, that could be kind of deployed and to help, from tech startups to more established health systems that just need, frankly, physician informatics help. And so, yeah, I'm on the path now to see how I can personally start helping kind of in those fractional ways. And kind of saying, well, if I can kind of figure it out myself, I can figure out how to model that to then scale it to a bunch of other people. Yeah. Kind of organically grow, something on the side, so to speak. And yeah. That's
really great. Wow. Well, Adam, we can go on for hours and hours, and I'm sure there'll be subsequent episodes in the future. But, I really appreciate you spending time. I highly suggest everyone go check out Adam on LinkedIn. Where else can they find you? Is it nerdmds.com?
Yeah, nerdmds.com. Just make sure you put the S. There's a nerdmd.com. It's not us.
No, this is the plural. This is where it's going
plural.
big. Okay, this isn't a singular operation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
and I from that website nerdmds.com, you can kind of get to everything that Dale and I do.
Yeah. Well, this was a lot of fun, Adam. Thank you so much for spending time.
Thank you, Mendel. Appreciate it.